What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here to take a first look at some of the Lions' upcoming free agents for the 2022 NFL offseason. This is our first little look into all of the guys that are no longer under contract for next season, that were under contract this past year, or this year. So let's get this started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take two more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and we are here to take a look at these upcoming free agents, man. There's a lot of them. There's a lot. Last offseason, the Lions signed a lot of one-year deals, so there's a lot of players that are set to become free agents this offseason, whether that's unrestricted, whether they're exclusive rights free agents, restricted free agents, all of them. We're going to take a look at all of those guys. This is just the first look into that as we get prepared for the offseason to be underway, at least for the Lions now, not for everybody. We know the playoffs, they go through February, so we still got some time with some of this, but I thought we'd get started by looking at our free agents first. All right, there's a lot in this offseason that's going to take place, but we might as well start with what guys we have that are going to become free agents. Now, the Lions are projected to have about $39 million in cap space when free agency and when the offseason kicks off. They're expected to have about that much cap space to spend, but we know that's going to fluctuate big time. The salary cap for 2022 is set, I believe, at $208.2 million, but it will fluctuate because the Lions will be able to cut players, they'll move contracts around, you can trade, like there'll be a lot going on. So things will move, numbers will change. So that's why I don't want to make this like super specific as if, okay, Lions bring this guy back, this is what their salary cap is at. But I did it sort of roughly, for myself, just to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. And yes, the Lions, they have a ton of free agents. So I thought we'd go through it, take a look at guys that are set to become free agents, talk about the players that maybe the Lions would like to bring back, guys that I would bring back, just kind of feel on it. Let me know in the comments below what guys you would bring back, and then kind of the contracts that you would be thinking for that type of player. That's still kind of early in that process too, of knowing how much teams will be paying guys. We know the salary cap is going up this offseason, so you can expect maybe some longer term deals this offseason. So anyways, let's just dive right into this. And also, you got to keep in mind, the Lions are going to be able to make cuts, and there's a lot of players after going through the roster that I kind of forgot about that I could see the Lions cutting. Not to save huge amounts of money. I mean, we all know about the Trey Flowers and the Big V situation, but even guys like, if you go through it, Jared Pinkney, Curtis Bolton, like those guys, yeah, they could be here next year, but you could cut them, save a little bit of money. Austin Seibert, who knows with Riley Patterson, right? There's guys like that. Trinity Benson, I could definitely see him getting cut, saving about, what was it, $800K, something in that range. So there's a lot of players, a lot of things that are going to go on. But I thought we'd start by taking a look at our upcoming free agents because, yes, there is a lot of them, and I'm struggling. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. We're gonna do it like this. We're gonna break down this way. I put what I think the Lions will do. That's what I put next to the players. Okay, based on their situation, what I think the Lions would do right now in my first look. Now, this could definitely change as we go through the offseason and as we learn more, we hear more pressers. But from what I know right now, my feeling on what the Lions will probably do with each one of these players, and here we go. Let's take a look at it. So we're sitting at about, like I said, approximately $39 million from what we've heard. And we start off with Nick Williams, who is an unrestricted free agent. If it says RFA, they're restricted. If it says EFRA, exclusive rights free agent, then they're that. But if it says nothing, it just means they're an unrestricted free agent, so they can go sign with any team. So for Nick Williams, I don't think the Lions re-sign him. I think they probably let him walk. I don't think this will be someone the Lions are like rushing to try to re-sign and bring him back. They gave him a pay cut last offseason, fed some of our young guys like Levi and stuff. They've kind of been in and out of the mix. I think we've seen Levi much more recently. Initially, when I put Nick Williams here, I automatically thought that, yeah, he probably wouldn't be brought back by the Lions. But the more I think about it, I could see the Lions maybe even just taking time to consider it. Again, I'm still going to roll with Walk, and not coming back, but I wouldn't close the door on it. If you look at Nick Williams, the deal that he had this season was $2.9 million for the season because they cut his contract in half basically with the pay cut. It was about $5 million a year when he initially signed to a 2-year, $10 million deal. It was $2.9 million for this season after his pay cut. And then you look at the production that he had this season, a little bit inconsistent on the field as a run stopper. His pass rush isn't great. He gives you a little bit of pass rush with the bull rush here and there. I think the reason why sometimes you see his numbers and sacks really spike, especially back with Chicago, is he's relentless. Like, he's going going to stay after it with the play, so he can sometimes just fall into sacks. Lions, they didn't have the best pass rushers around him, this year to open him up a ton, but there's a couple things in Nick Williams' games they do like. First off, he was very versatile along the defensive line. On passing downs, they could slide him in over the center. They could play him at the 3 technique. Also did something that not a ton of players did this season, and some of this is luck with injuries, but he did play in every single game this season for the Lions. Every game, and he routinely played over 50% of the snaps. He played a lot for us this season, so there's also that side. Plus, when you look at the $2.9 million for a season, and you look at other defensive linemen paid last offseason, and you just kind of compare the price points to the production that you're getting, it's not bad. Like, for example, the Browns signed Malik Jackson. Now, the Browns play a 4-3 defense. They have better pass rushers around him. He was on a 1-year, $3.75 million, more expensive than Nick Williams. Yet their production is nearly identical across the board. Statistically speaking, it's nearly identical production. So Nick Williams, being that he's 31 years old, I don't really think it's, he's going to get a lot better. I think you kind of know what he is. But at the same time, I wouldn't completely count out the idea of bringing him back for depth purposes, because when you look at our depth chart, we don't have a ton of depth right now. Now, I would address this in the offseason. I would definitely draft or go get some more defensive line help. Probably look to the draft, though, because of pricing reasons there. But to look for more help along this defensive line, you want to believe that Levi's going to take a much bigger step in the next season, where he can play a much bigger role more consistently than he did this season. Aleem did some good things. He still has a ways to go, though. But then you have Michael Brockers. But Nick Williams was good for depth. But when you look at what we have, Jayshon Cornell, the guy really hasn't played for the Lions in 2 years. I mean, not really at all. He only played 4 snaps this season. So don't really know what we have in Jayshon. And he could easily just come back because he's on his rookie deal. They could cut him to try to save a little under $1 million, but he could come back. But you still don't really know what you have there. Bruce Hector, he's on the practice squad, so the Lions could look to bring him back. But now not having Deshaun Hand, your depth isn't super deep at that position where you really know what you're getting, aside from guys like Nick Williams. So I'm going to still roll with Walk and not come back as an early prediction. Knew what you were going to get week to week. It's just the thing is, his ceiling isn't super high. So if his price point stayed around the same, maybe even goes down a little bit, I wouldn't count it out as another depth option for the Lions next season, but I would definitely be addressing this in the offseason. So I'm going to go with Walk. But I went with Walk for now. Now, Tim Boyle, this is where things get interesting. So Tim Boyle, backup quarterback, he's also an unrestricted free agent this offseason. He's 27 years old, and again, this is predictions. I think the Lions do re-sign Tim Boyle. I think they bring him back. He signed a 1-year, $2.3 million deal this offseason, so I just gave him the same deal here. I tried to get creative a little bit with the contracts, based on what other people were getting paid around the league at certain positions, based on what they've done this season. Tim Boyle could go up a little bit because he's played a little bit this year. I don't think he gets super expensive after this season. Right? I don't think that happens. It's not like he had a huge game, where he's stepping at 4 touchdowns and other teams were taking note of that. I don't think he would be. So I just put the same deal. I would assume it'd probably be around the same ballpark. And I think the Lions do bring Tim Boyle back. I know he wants to be back. I think they bring Boyle back, and I think he competes for the backup position. And of course, he'll compete for the starter position too. They like the high ceiling of Tim Boyle. They think he has a very high ceiling as a quarterback. So I know not everybody's on board with that. We haven't won with him. It doesn't look like he's going to play this weekend, but I think that's what's going to happen. I think Boyle's going to end up back. So I just put the same contract that he got this offseason. 1 year, $2.3 million. I think Boyle's coming back, man. Jalen Reeves-Maybin. This one was hard because I wasn't sure what kind of contract to give him. He signed a 1 year, I think, $2.3 million deal this offseason. So I bumped it up a little bit to $3 million. Looking at his stats, you compare him to other linebackers around the league. $3 million would put him in the area of like an Anthony Walker, a Denzel Perryman type of linebacker. Okay, I guess I could see that. Now he's on the younger side. He helps you on special teams. Look, the Lions definitely want him back. I can see the contract being even more expensive. Maybe they turn this into a 2-year deal. But I think Jalen's another one of those guys they want back. So I would definitely think that Jalen gets re-signed again this offseason. They want him back. And if he is back, he would have a shot to compete for a starting linebacker spot next year. With that being said, I believe he'll come back. I definitely do. Because even if he's not the starter, they'll trust him as a backup. They know what he does on special teams. And he's still a young player. So he's having his best season because he's really getting an opportunity this year. And he's been pretty good recently. So I got Jalen coming back. The deal here one was really tough to figure out. I just went 1 year, $3 million. I could see this being an extra year because of his age. I could see it being maybe a little bit more expensive, but I don't think it'll get super expensive with Jalen reeves-maybin, just when you look at, the linebackers and where they're getting paid around the league. So I just went 1 year, $3 million. But anyways, Jalen, either way, the point is here is I think Jalen will be one of those guys the Lions try to bring back this offseason. And I think there's a lot of guys like that. This might be the most difficult one on here is Charles Harris, because I'm a huge Charles Harris guy. We've been saying for months on Last Dose, bring this guy back. I mean, I've been on the Charles Harris train for a while to bring this dude back this offseason. However, his market value right now projected is sitting at 4 years, $34 million. It's about 8.25, I think, a year. Is that right? That might not be right. I think that's a little off. I think that's a little, maybe it's like 8.4. Either way, a little over $8 million this offseason per season. Now, of course, you can set up contract different ways, so it doesn't have to be that. I just did it, basic when I did it on my salary cap thing. I just made it the same every single year to equal that amount. But 4 years, $34 million. It's a pretty expensive contract. It definitely is. And I was trying to weigh the pros and cons of bringing a guy like this back. We'll probably do his own breakdown at some point. This is just kind of our first look at everybody. We'll probably do a video at some point of should the Lions bring back Charles Harris and go through and break it all down. Charles Harris is having his best season. He's got 7.5 sacks this year. He's got 63 total tackles. He's got 33 pressures, which is more pressures than Romeo had last season, but 3 less quarterback hits. He's been great this year. The former first-round pick has had his best season of his entire career. And what really sticks out to me with Charles is that he's played in every single game. He's not started every game. He's only started 13, but he's played in every single game. That is huge. You're looking for reliability in the NFL, and he's been reliable. He's been there every week. He's shown up, and he hasn't always had help on the other side, which doesn't always help your production as well. Now, to the flip side of that, I think his numbers, his stats, sacks specifically, are a little bit inflated because of the Vikings game. He had 2 sacks. And both of those sacks were a guard playing at tackle because they didn't have their tackle. Nothing to, not taking anything away from Charles, but it was the truth. They had Udo out there. He was struggling, and he took advantage of it, so good for him. I was struggling with, though, because that's an expensive contract. Would you really be willing to pay that much? And I don't know he'd get that much. I don't. I think that would put his contract through 31 years old. I think it's more realistic that he gets maybe a 3-year deal. Maybe more realistic of a 3-year deal, because this offseason on a 1 year, $1.75 million, which is crazy. So, I mean, he's out playing that, no question. I think maybe 3-year deal is more realistic than 4 years. Romeo Cora's only got 2 years left on his deal now, right? Because was injured basically this entire season. But then you would have those two guys. Now, I think if you re-sign Charles Harris, I think Trey Flowers has to be let go somehow, some way. Whether that's by a cut, a trade, something. All right, just not only for depth reasons, but also in rotation reasons, but also for financial reasons. When you look at the Lions' their salary cap, if you pay a guy like Charles Harris this much money, now, of course, like I said, you can load the contract different ways, so it doesn't mean that 8 point something has to go on this year. You can change it up a little bit, but paying both Trey Flowers and Romeo Cora and then giving Charles Harris this kind of deal, and that's the thing, pass rushers are always going to get paid. So this is not even surprising, because if you're a pass rusher, you're going to get paid. That's the thing. That's what's so tough about pass rushers, is that you can easily overpay them because they get paid. They're so important in the NFL. You don't want to be paying all 3 of those guys. I mean, you got Trey Flowers making $16 million a year. Then you got Romeo with $10 million. Then you got 8 point something million for Charles Harris. And a lot of us believe Lions will go top pick pass rusher. So if they did all of that, you know how much money you'd be spending at that spot? I'm not saying that's a bad spot to spend money. You also got to think of, okay, are you willing to pay this to a guy that may end up being a backup? If I go, even if Trey Flowers is gone, whether that's cut, trade, whatever it may be, even if Flowers is gone, if I draft a top outside linebacker, whether that's a Hutchinson or a Kayvon and in my top pick, then Charles may end up being my backup. Am I willing to pay that much money to a backup pass rusher? Am I willing to do that? That's where it makes it tough for me. I'm predicting, I think the Lions will. I think first off, they're very loyal to players, especially players that play well. They're giving a lot of guys chances defensively, including Charles Harris, and he's made the most of it. I mean, I don't know how the Lions can go away from Charles Harris after what he's done this season. I don't think they can do it. I think the Lions would definitely bring back Charles Harris because of the season that he's had. I mean, you look at a guy like Trey Flowers, right? What led to that big deal? Well, he was great in New England's system. Well, Charles Harris is great in our system, right? He's just thriving. He's gotten the opportunity. He's in the right defense for him. He's showing up every single week. Plus, he's not even bad at run defense. He's a good run defender, too. He's proven to be a really good scheme fit. I mean, they can ask him to do pretty much anything. He can drop into coverage. He can sit in flats. So there's so much versatility within his game because he'll help you on a run, he'll get after the quarterback, and he can drop into coverage. It's the type of player that they wanted. The price gets insane. This is a pretty high price point. It makes things interesting. Definitely, to me, means Trey Flowers has to go somehow, some way. If you cut Trey Flowers pre-June 1st, then I think you save about $10 million this year, $23 million the year after. If you do it post-June 1st, or if you designate it for post-June 1st, you save more this season. But of course, more would be, less would be saved in 2023. So you'd say less than the $23 million. You could always look to trade him. I think that would be the best option. But I don't know how many teams would be willing to trade for that contract. This one's a tough one because that's a lot of money. It's one of those spots. Maybe he doesn't get that much. I think it'd be probably more realistic. It's a 3-year deal. I mean, the Lions love their pressure players, right? They paid Romeo $10 million a year. They love their pressure guys. This guy came in and he played really well all season. He showed up every single week. I don't know if the Lions can overlook that. I don't know if the Lions can not bring that back. So I got him re-signing Charles Harris here. I do. And we'll see what the contract turned into. Let me know in the comments what you guys think would happen with Charles Harris. Now, this is another hard one. I didn't know where to go with the contract with this one. Alex Anzalone went 2 years, $6 million. Again, it's kind of in the same range of Jalen Reeves-Maybin here. I started with $8 million. I moved it down a little bit. So this offseason, he actually signed for a smaller deal than Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He signed a 1-year, $1.75 million deal. So this would be moving his money up. Statistically speaking, I don't think he had like a crazy season where go end up getting like a ton of money this offseason. I don't think that'll happen. Plus, we know he's injured right now. But it's just tough with the linebacker market. I mean, you got Jared Davis. He got 1 year, $5.5 million. He just didn't play this year because of injuries, basically. But he was also a first-round pick. Alex, when we picked him up, he was kind of turned into a backup. And it was like, okay, so he was kind of, where his stock was low. So we picked him up. We scooped him up for cheap. So I think his stock's definitely higher now. But I still don't think it would be super high. But I think clearly the Lions really like the guy. Alex Anzalone is a leader for this defense. They like him going forward. He's young enough where it's no issue to lock this guy up, even on a multi-year deal. Definitely young enough to do that. Would love to have Alex Anzalone back. I like the way Alex has played. I think he's been much better since the whole Jamie Collins situation, since he's been out. We know what he does he can help us in coverage, and he's made some plays there, but it's the kind of linebacker that they like. Now, I could definitely see Lions drafting a linebacker this year. A lot of people have been on the bus of drafting a linebacker high this offseason as well, saying that we need this linebacker help. Now, we'll go through the rest of this. We have multiple more linebackers on here, but I definitely think they're bringing back Alex. Plus, you got to keep in mind Derek Barnes. I think a lot of it will come down to Derek Barnes and how they feel about Derek Barnes going into next year and the role that he can have next year. He was going to play the Mike linebacker position. That's why he's number 55. He's going to play Mike linebacker. He's going to be that guy for us, right? And they kept him at that position all year. We just saw very, very inconsistent playing time, especially towards the end there. Then he started seeing Anthony Pittman take some minutes from him. He just didn't play that much. It wasn't completely polished and ready to go, which isn't a huge surprise because in college he only did it for 1 year. He only played inside linebacker for 1 season. You saw the flashes of athleticism, the run defense, pass coverage was extremely questionable. Change direction, when he's down the field has been an issue going back to college. But it'll depend, I think, a lot on how they feel about Derek Barnes, depending on how high in the draft they would go for a linebacker. Because I think free agency, they're going to bring a lot of these linebackers back, and we're gonna take a look at it as we go through it for depth reasons. Jalen's going to have a chance, to compete for a starting position. Alex Anzalone could definitely be a star next year. I don't see any issue with that. We'll see how it goes. And then Derek Barnes as well. Does Derek Barnes take over a starting role like maybe the Lions thought he'd be able to when they drafted him? It'll be a lot on Barnes, I think, depending on how early they go on linebacker. Because I've been watching linebackers in the draft too. But when you just look at the depth that we have, I think a lot of it's going to come down to their feeling on where Derek Barnes is at. I think they like Alex. I think they'll bring him back as well. Continuing down, Josh Reynolds. It's another guy where I know we're signing a lot of guys. This will slow down. But Josh Reynolds, 1 year, $1.75 million. Josh Reynolds' contract is tough as well because statistically he doesn't really have much numbers this year. He has 18 receptions, but we know how big he's been since he stepped in for us. I mean, he has changed so much within our offense with his ability to play the extra zero position when we needed it. Goff trusts him a ton. So if Goff is going to be around next year, I don't know how you can not bring Josh Reynolds back, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, the number would have to just get too high to not do it, but I think if it stays low, I don't know how you cannot bring back Josh Reynolds this offseason for what he's done, the way that Goff has played with him, the success he's had throwing in the football, the trust that he has in him. And Reynolds is playing well. That doesn't mean he's going to be our starter next season, but that kind of contract doesn't lock you into being a starter anyway. I definitely think his numbers could go up a little bit from $1.75 million. I just wasn't really sure where to put it. When you look at receivers and you go through the receiver market, there's so many receivers in the league that's kind of tough, and you got a lot of young receivers. I mean, there's guys like Hopkins stuff making $27 million, but because of his production, I don't really think it's going to get super expensive. The Titans really signed Reynolds to a $1.75 million deal, coming off a 52 reception, 618-yard season. Versus this year where he'd be coming off of, depending on his last game, 18 receptions. Maybe he tops higher at like $3 million. I don't know. Maybe I'm really underestimating this. I don't know where to put this for Reynolds, but I definitely think you have to bring him back. I think you got to bring back Josh Reynolds for how much he's really opened up for this passing offense. I do. I think it'd be huge to have Josh Reynolds back. And again, shout out to Kadero Hodge. I thought he played well when Josh Reynolds was down in his last game. Tim Boyle throwing to him, but he's done a lot for us. So I think Josh Reynolds, I think he's got to be brought back, and I think the Lions will heavily consider that. Not guarantee it. At that point, you would have Josh Reynolds, Quintez Cephas, and St. Brown back as your receivers. At that point, we'll go through the rest. So I would bring him back personally. Khalif Raymond's another one I've kind of struggled with because I don't know. I don't know if the Lions bring him back. I don't think they have to bring him back, but he's helped us as a punt returner. What I think sticks out for him is that he blocks. He is a really nice route runner. He does draw a lot of attention deep. We just haven't been able to get the production that we would have liked to have. But I do like Khalif. $1.1 million, I think, is like $200K more than he's making this year. He's like on $990,000. But he wasn't really playing in his past offense. So again, I think his contract could go up a little bit. But I think if it stays really low like this, I think the Lions would definitely consider bringing him back as well. Now, I like the bigger receivers for Jared Goff. I like that guys with size for Jared Goff, but Khalif Raymond has done a lot of different little things for us. He's helped us in a lot of different ways, including special teams. Another player that I think the Lions could consider bringing back. Don't think they have to. It's not necessarily like something they'd be rushing to do, but I think they definitely could. Now, the first walk we have is Kadero Hodge. Again, Kadero Hodge has helped us because he's been a gunner for us, but I think you could probably find another gunner. Josh Reynolds was down in our last game, but early in the season, that wasn't the case, right? We were trying to figure out who could play X for us, and we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't find it. We shuffled through a whole bunch of guys. I don't think Kadero Hodge will be brought back this offseason. Again, maybe if something happens and you're further along in the offseason, you can pick him up super cheap because I don't think he'll be that expensive. Maybe you pick him up then, but I don't think this is something the Lions are going to make a priority to bring back Kadero Hodge. So I have him walking in my early prediction. This is a really weird one to me because I could see this one going both ways. Dean Marlowe. I've kind of bounced around between this. Do the Lions go younger or do they go with the guy that they've been playing more? Dean Marlowe, he really hasn't made any big plays, but he hasn't played bad either, and he's been the safety for us as Will Harris has played cornerback with Tracy Walker, whoever they put out there. But he's played more than CJ Moore. He's played more than Jalen Elliott. Dean Marlowe, to me, again, won't be that expensive this offseason, just like he wasn't when we brought him in. So I have it on a 1-year, $990K, deal. Just depth for the Lions as a backup safety that they can trust when they put in. Unless they go high in the draft for a safety, I think they will probably set aside some money, a pretty good amount of money for a safety this offseason. I actually would have no issues that being maybe one of their biggest, if not their biggest signing this offseason, because I think you could really use safety. I think they're going to be in the market for a top safety, someone to go with Tracy Walker. I think it'd be nice to get a guy that maybe already has connections with some of our defensive staff, that's kind of knows what's asked of him, plug in and play a little bit more ready. Now, of course, they could do that within the draft, but I think the Lions will do that. But Dean Marlowe, in this case, it would just be for depth. In this type of contract, it'd be very similar to what a CJ Moore or Jalen Elliott or one of those guys, or Brady Breeze, who is under contract. He might end up being cut, but one of those guys, it'd be very similar to that. So this one I wasn't sure on. I just went with Marlowe because he's been playing more than the other guys, but maybe they go with a young dude instead. I just kind of went with Dean Marlowe because of the playing time they've been giving him. Joel Heath, we didn't see him this year. He was injured, pretty sure in the offseason, so we didn't get to see him at all this year, the defensive lineman. So I don't have the Lions, bringing him back. I just have him walking. That's another unrestricted free agent. Now here we go. Here mixes it up a little bit. We have a restricted free agent. This is Evan Brown, the center. So he does have 3 seasons in the NFL. His contract is now expiring, so he's a restricted free agent, which changes things up a little bit. The Lions could place the tender here. I don't think the Lions would place a draft tender on him, first round, second round. Of course, he was undrafted, so I don't think they would place something like that. I think the Lions will find an extension for Evan Brown, end up getting Evan Brown back under contract for at least next season. It probably shouldn't be super expensive either. When you look at backup center contracts around the NFL, they're really not that expensive, so I don't think this will be super expensive to bring him back, even though he's been solid for us. The other teams looking at that. The Lions could put a right of first refusal, a tender on Evan Brown, which would be at $2.4 million.
But again, I think we'll be able to just extend him.
Of course, if someone, he can go out there and he could look for an extension with someone else, but the Lions will have an opportunity to match that. The only difference is, since we're not putting a draft pick on this, is that if he does go and leave and you don't match the offer that someone else gives in Evan Brown, then at that point you wouldn't get a draft pick in return. Versus if I put a second round tender on him, of course, if someone, wanted to give him an offer and we didn't want to match it, we let him go, they would have to give us that pick. But I don't think any team's going to be willing to do that, number one. So, and number two, it would be expensive. So it would be pretty expensive. They want Evan Brown back this offseason as their backup center. Jason Cabinda, he's also a restricted free agent, and I have him signing a 1 year, $1.4 million. Again, I don't think you put a tender on Jason Cabinda, being that he is the fullback. But I think he does get an extension. He gets brought back. I don't have a long-term deal here. I'm only going 1.14. Maybe that's even too high. I might be going too high with the price here for a fullback. Looking at fullbacks, there's a couple that are getting paid. Like in San Fran, they're paying their huge checks of money. There's a couple of guys, but after that, there's really not a ton of fullbacks making much money in this league. Maybe it's too low, though, because I think he has had a good season, and they like him as well. Will Holden, the tackle, I think you let him walk. He's been like our 7th offensive tackle. He may end up actually playing this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. That could affect some things. Tracy Walker. This is another tough one. I don't know how much we'd be looking at here with Tracy Walker. Now, Tracy Walker wants to be back. He loves the coaching staff. He said that today. He wants to be back on this team. So I did a 3-year, $25 million deal. I know that's expensive. A lot of that has to do with his age because he's coming off of his rookie deal. So a lot of the reason it's so high is because of his age. Like, it's more expensive than Diggs, but Diggs was also 29 years old. But it's also not up there with a lot of young safeties who come out and then they get paid like double digit. They make it like $11 to $13 million a year. I think it'll be necessary to pay him that much per season. He doesn't have the plays on the football in the pass game to make his contract super expensive here. So 3 years, $25 million. It's a pretty expensive contract. A lot of that's because of his age. But the Lions really like him as a tackler. They think he's really improving in this defense.
There has been some talk out there about the Detroit Lions possibly putting a franchise tag or transition tag, but like a franchise tag on Tracy Walker. But the safety position, if you put a franchise tag, it'd be $13.5 million for this season alone. And that would be just to give the Lions a little bit more time, maybe get another year to see him before they fully lock him in for an extra season. But I think the Lions, I think they've seen enough, and I also think that if they're going to spend that kind of money, because that's a lot for them. I mean, $13 million just for this season alone, that's a lot of cap hit. If you give them the extension, you can always move the money around a little bit. So I have them just going with the extension here over putting him on a tag. I think the Lions like him. I think they want to bring him back, and they're cool with locking him up. Maybe not, though. I mean, it's an idea if you want to just bring him back for another season before you make a final decision on whether or not you really want to lock him up for years. But I think the Lions, I think they're cool with locking him up for years. Kind of contract will put him in the range of like a Von Bell, the Quandre Diggs, a little bit more than like an Eric Murray. And instead of, it'd be a little bit lower, about $2-3 million, close to $4 million lower, like in that range, lower than a John Johnson or a Marcus Williams. These guys had really good seasons when they got paid. John Johnson by the Browns, and the Saints one. Marcus Williams, he's on the franchise tag, though, so that one's a little bit different. But either way, like, it's not that level. It's kind of in the Von Bell level. And I'm like, okay, I guess, that's fine. That's how I came up with that contract.
3 years, $25 million. That's kind of a tough guess. I don't really know how much to go with that. It's maybe 4 years, $28 million, something like that. I don't know where to go with the amount there, but that's kind of the one that I came out with, looking at other safeties getting paid around the league. Brock Wright is a exclusive rights free agent. So if you're exclusive rights free agent, it means that the team can pay you the minimum, and you really can't do anything about it. You're just back on the team for the minimum deal for that next season. So I have the Lions doing that with Brock Wright, giving him the league minimum, having him back next season to get their tight end depth back, and they'll have him, and then they'll have TJ Hawkinson. Jesse Lemonier, I've been messing that up all year. All right, for Jesse, I have him just walking. He's another exclusive rights free agent. I don't think the Lions will put him on the league minimum here. I don't think they need to. They would have Austin Bryant. They draft a pass rusher. I have them bringing back Charles Harris. Julian Okwara will be on the roster, and they have Romeo Okwara. So I don't think it's necessary to bring back Jesse. And then you finish it off with Tom Kennedy, who's also an exclusive rights free agent. I don't have them re-signing him either. He made the roster this offseason, but bringing back Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, you have Cephas, you have St. Brown. I think they end up drafting someone again this year, maybe even two. So Tom Kennedy, to me, is someone that, it's not necessary to really bring back for depth reasons either. Now, on to this side, another restricted free agent, we have Josh Woods. I don't have them doing really anything with Josh Woods. I have them just letting him walk, and you'll see why in a little bit. That one was kind of hard, though, because I know they do like him for special teams. So I was considering maybe something there, maybe something real cheap for special teams. But I'm gonna go with Walk, and you'll see why. I did something pretty interesting with this. You'll see what I'm saying. Matt Nelson. Now, this is one where personally I wouldn't bring him back. Personally, I wouldn't do it, but I think the Lions will. He's an exclusive rights free agent as well, so you can bring him back on a league minimum for a season. So it's not like it's super expensive to do it. I just wouldn't do it personally. After seeing this year, I don't want there to be a shot where this guy comes into the game next season has to start a tackle. I mean, that's assuming he's the same guy. Now, of course, he can improve during the offseason and be completely different next year, but I don't want that to be a situation. I wouldn't bring him back on the league minimum. I would not. I'd go anywhere else, bring something else in, try something different, but I think the Lions, we know what he can do as a sixth offensive lineman. I think they'll bring him back on the league minimum. So I guess I get it. It's not super expensive, but I would be okay with not doing that. But again, it's a prediction more. Same thing, exclusive rights free agent. I bring him back on the league minimum. Get your punter back for real cheap, and he's a great punter. So why not do that? Continue down. David Blau, restricted free agent. Letting him walk. David Blau, I don't think he's coming back next year. Just simple as that. The Lions haven't played him. He's been the third string quarterback since preseason. Don't think he's coming back next year. And I have them bringing back Tim Boyle. I think they could definitely draft someone this year. Maybe they sign someone like you guys think, like a vet. I think they go late to mid, draft somebody this year, something like that to compete. But I don't think David Blau is going to be part of that. I think they kind of look at it like that right now. So no reason to keep him around. I have them letting him walk. Bro, Crosby, same thing, have them letting him walk. You guys remember preseason when he came in and he played like a drive and he struggled a little bit, but it was like the only game he played in. The Lions cut him. And he had the injury, so he ended up hitting IR. But the Lions cut him, and they're like, well, he didn't play well. He stepped in, he didn't play well. Well, the Lions, I don't think are going to mess around with this Crosby situation. He's out. I don't see it. I don't think the Lions are very big Terrell Crosby fans. Anthony Pittman, exclusive rights, free agent. We're going to come back to Anthony Pittman. Let me leave that one for a second. Scott Daly, exclusive rights again. Bring him back on league minimum. Get your long snapper and your punter back. You got to do that. Mark Gilbert. I was thinking about bringing him back, but when I look at the cornerback position, you got Jacobs under contract of 2023. You have Iffy under contract. Of course, he's a rookie. You have AJ under contract 2023. You have Okuda's coming back. You have Amani. You got enough corners where I'm like, yeah, you probably don't need to do this. You could, though. It's cheap if you wanted the depth. They played him a little bit this year, but they've also went with Will Harris at cornerback. So, again, I don't think it's necessary. So I just have him walking here, not doing it. Now here's where things get interesting with me at the linebacker spot. This is why we'll come back to Pittman, because DoseOfDion Hamilton, forgot about this guy. He got injured to begin the season. He hasn't played all year. We signed him to a very cheap deal though. I think his deal was actually this same deal. I'm just giving him the same deal again. I mean, why would it get more expensive if he didn't play all season? Maybe even gets cheaper. I haven't just re-signed the guy back. Why? The Lions, to me, like DoseOfDion Hamilton. They at least did in the training camp. I don't know how the season would have went. Maybe that affects them because they didn't get to see him play. But in the training camp, we came in kind of thinking he might be a starter for the Lions at inside linebacker. Just the reps that he was getting through training camp, he was pointing towards possibly being a starter at linebacker for the Lions going through drills. But then he got hurt. He didn't play all season. So the good thing is there, I think, keeps his contract cheap. And I think the Lions could definitely bring him back. Now, of course, Anthony Pittman is another option. You bring him back as an exclusive rights free agent. It's cheap as well. You could bring him back. He's played a little bit this year. Of course, you got guys like Curtis Bolton, who I said you might end up cutting anyways. There's different linebackers on this team that you could go with for cheap. But I was like, why not just go with DoseOfDion Hamilton? I mean, the Lions liked the guy. And if you thought at one point maybe this guy could be the starter, why not just bring him back for depth reasons if you're going to bring back any of these linebackers? Now, maybe they don't bring him back. Maybe they're cool with bringing back Jalen, having Derek Barnes, rolling with those into this offseason. But I think for depth reasons, you might as well keep another one. I'm going with DoseOfDion Hamilton over Anthony Pittman. But I could see why you go with Pittman because they've been giving him a shot recently. I could see that, right? What have you done for me lately? I could see it. Bobby Price. Exclusive rights free agent, league minimum. I'm bringing him back. Bring back Bobby Price for cornerback depth. Don't think it's necessary. Personally, I'd be cool with letting him walk. But the Lions, I think, like Bobby Price. They moved the corner. They were so excited. They liked his size, his ability, his speed. He just wasn't ready to play cornerback when we tried to do it. So I think they kind of like him, and they'd be cool with bringing him back, especially because it's going to be a league minimum for another year. To me, I mean, personally, I'd be cool just letting him walk. But anyways, I think the Lions may consider bringing him back. And that would pretty much fill out a lot of their cornerback depth. So if they wanted to keep a spot open, they could just let him go, which I'm cool with. I would sign a vet cornerback, and I'd roll with that cornerback unit next year. But for the Lions, they may bring him back because they like some of that versatility in his size and his natural ability, I guess you would call it. CJ Moore, another kind of tough one. This is where I was struggling between him and Dean Marlowe. He'd probably be the most likely guy I would choose over Dean Marlowe before Jalen Elliott, because CJ Moore's played more than Jalen Elliott. He's been a little bit more versatile, seemingly, than Jalen Elliott, playing different spots for us. So I really struggled with. Initially, I actually went with CJ Moore over Dean Marlowe, but I switched it up. I went with CJ Moore, allowing him to become a unrestricted free agent. Maybe you do bring him up and bring him back cheap, but I definitely don't think we're placing a tender on CJ Moore. I don't think we're going to place any kind of tender on this guy. So to me, he'll become a free agent. Someone else may pick him up. Maybe we bring him back really cheap over D. Marlowe. I could see that. Those two I'm not completely sold on yet. Tommy Kramer, I thought he definitely struggled in our last game. I know he's super young, though. He struggled in our last game against Seattle, but it was a great defensive front. They gave him fits left and right, all over the place. But it was a really good defensive front with Al Woods and those guys. So I understand it. He's still very young, but they seem to really like Tommy Kramer. They've seemed to like him all season. Now, they do have Logan Stenberg, who is currently under contract for next year. He was just hurt all season. But I thought they liked Logan too, going back to the preseason. I thought they liked both of them, but it's just that Logan got hurt.
Now, another one of these guys that we will have to do a video on at some point is offensive guard Big V. All right, whether or not the Lions bring him back, do they try to offer him a little bit of pay cut, take some of that base salary? It's not a huge base salary. Maybe try to cut that down a little bit, save a little bit of money. We know this year is his potential out. So we'll have to talk about him as well. But even if Big V is back, I still think, having that depth is fine with Kramer and Logan Stenberg and, Evan Brown. I'm perfectly cool with that. And of course, if Big V is not back, then Kramer's necessary to bring back. I don't think Kramer's shown me in the games that he's played this year that I'm going to be very comfortable with him starting at guard next year. But he will have an offseason, of course, to try to get better. And Logan Stenberg, who we didn't get to see this year, I know he was playing really well in the preseason. We just didn't get to see him really aside from that because he was injured in the preseason. We haven't seen him this year. So that's another one of those guys. So we'll talk about that more when we do a Big V video, but I have them bringing back for sure Tommy Kramer at this spot.
Okay, here we go. Riley Patterson, league minimum. He's your kicker. Now, here's the thing about Riley Patterson. The only concern I have is Patterson's been really good, except for I don't know how much range he has. That kick against Seattle was pretty ugly. It could have been the win, but it was really short. I don't know what kind of range he's got. And I know the Lions spoke highly of Seibert, but then you see what Riley Patterson's doing. Seibert's under contract for next year. You could bring both back like this, sign him to the league minimum, and then just have them battle it out during the offseason and see who wins the job, and then you cut the guy that doesn't win the job. They could do that. But I think based on what Patterson has done, aside from that long kick, I think he earned himself at least a shot. So I went league minimum. Oh my goodness, I'm ruining stuff. And then we got Ryan McCollum. Let him walk. He'd be our third string center. I don't think he played that well. The only thing going for him would be that he has experience with this offense, and they kept him around for a little while. He played, but he didn't play well. I have him walking in this situation with Evan Brown coming back. Rashad Berry, let him walk again. You don't need all these outside linebackers. They filled in, but you don't need them right now. Godwin, this is another one where I really struggled. I have him walking here. I think the Lions like Godwin, though, as our kick returner. I think you can find a new kick returner. I think the Lions really like him. So this one was tough because they could bring him back on the league minimum. For salary cap purposes, I didn't. You would have Jamal, you'd have Swift, you'd have Jefferson, you'd have Craig. I don't think you need to bring back Godwin. But I think they really like Godwin. So that's one that you could see up at the star next to it because I'm just not sure. Comment down below what you think with Godwin. Bring him back on the league minimum or let him walk. I don't know. Maybe it's more likely they bring him back to league minimum. Maybe I messed that one up. I just don't know. That one I'm struggling with. But I got him walking. And then Jalen Elliott, I'm letting him walk as well. I'm not, giving him the league minimum there because I went with Dean Marlowe. But again, you could probably go with CJ Moore or Jalen Elliott, who would be a league minimum bring back. But that's what I have for the upcoming free agents. Just kind of a first look. Nothing really set in stone here. But just kind of my first look at the free agents that are set to come for the Lions this year and what I was kind of thinking. Now, with all these moves, my salary cap was really darn low. I'm not going to lie. With these contracts that you see here, my salary cap is like a little over $10-11 million. It's kind of expensive. But again, I didn't backload contracts. I put it the same every single year. So it was expensive, but that also includes me cutting Trey Flowers. Now, I did that as a pre-June 1st cut, which means that I saved less this year. That saves me $10 million. But if I cut him and I make it a post-June 1st designation, I would save a little bit less for 2023, but I'd save $16 million this year, which would put my salary cap right now after my cuts I made at just under $20 million. So that may make more sense, and of course, if we could trade it, that'd be great. I also made some cuts as well. I cut guys like, because, the Lions are going to be making cuts. I cut I cut Trinity Benson, Hunter Bryant, Charlie Taumapau, Jared Pinkney, Curtis Bolton. Two guys I was kind of struggling on were Jayshon Cornell and Austin Seibert. I think Seibert sticks around to keep competing. Jayshon Cornell, I'm not sure, because for depth reasons, we could use it going into the offseason because we don't have a ton of depth with not bringing back Nick Williams, having Deshaun Hand out, and that kind of stuff. But we haven't seen him play that much. It doesn't seem like they're really in love with Jayshon Cornell by any means. So I don't know about that one. I could see him being cut, which would save me even more money. Not super expensive deals, but it does add up. And then you could go and sign some of these practice squad guys you got, like Bruce Hector. Me, I don't think there's any lock on Jayshon Cornell sticking around. I could see them moving on from him, even though he's still in his rookie deal. But that's kind of our first look. Let me know your thoughts. What do you guys think about this? Who do you like on here bringing back? Who do you not like bringing back? Contracts, don't get too caught up in them because they're just kind of I don't know. I was just trying to put something together to make it make sense a little bit, but it's not perfect. So yes, with those cuts, I'm about $20 million in cap space. We started at about 38, but again, I didn't backload anything. So if I took, like, let's say Tracy Walker's contract, and instead of it being like a little over $7 million a year, or $8 million a year, over 8 a year, if I put like 5 only on this year, then I would be at like $22 million in cap space. Then you got to worry about the draft, which Lions are going to have to spend more money on the draft this year because they have 2 first-round picks. Work that goes into, I think, making this contract stuff work and finding a way to get money. It seems like, 38, man, we're going to be rich this offseason. But after all this, like, I'm not rich anymore, man. It's going to be tough. So there's a lot of little things Lions are going to have to do, and they're going to have to make sure they set up contracts correctly to get some money for this year.
You guys know we'll do mock off seasons. We have, of course, mock drafts that'll come at some point, and we'll go through needs of this team, because mine have definitely changed. Like, defensive line is way up there for me in terms of needs this offseason compared to where it was. So that's definitely up there. But I just want to take a first look at who's going to become a free agent for us and just some early predictions on what the Lions may do with some of these free agents. And we'll probably break down maybe some of them individually. We'll look at some of the big names this offseason that it's like, what are they going to do with them? Like last year, we went through Romeo Okwara versus Kenny Galladay, who to bring back. We'll do that with Big V and Trey Flowers. Is it worth it based on the salary? But this was just a nice little overview first look at who is going to become free agent. Plus, then, of course, you have the practice squad players as well, so keep that in mind. But I just want to get a first look at this, just so everybody could check it out and, put some numbers to it.
I just want to resign a lot of their guys. I know that. I maybe went a little overboard with some of the receivers, but this is just kind of my early thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.